Okay, good morning to all. Yes,
Good
please.
morning, sir.
Okay, madam. Yes, please. So today we will start with the second unit, and second unit is related to the different approaches to management. Different approaches to management, in which we will discuss about different management thinkers. That with what approach these management thinkers studied management. Now, I have told you in the one of the earlier lectures that management has borrowed contents from different disciplines. May it be economics, may it be psychology, sociology, anthropology, even literature, even mathematics when we talk of quantitative school of management. So that is why one of the important authors on management, that is Harold Kuhns, in 1961 called it management jungle theory. So he viewed management as jack of all trades but master of none, because it borrowed contents from different disciplines, and these were just management was just the assembly, was considered as the assembly of the contents of the different disciplines, you can say. Then we will see that if we have to classify the different approaches to management, that how management has been studied traditionally, then we can classify these approaches into three categories. Now, what are these three categories into which these management approaches or management schools of thoughts can be classified? First is classical approach. Second is neoclassical approach. And third is modern approach. Modern approach. Now, before we start with these three approaches, what is classical, what is neoclassical, or what is modern? Now, let's first see what was happening in the pre-classical era. So, during the pre-classical times, pre-classical. So, one of the important theorists is Robert Owen. Robert Owen. So his era was 1771 to 1858. So he emphasized on, for the very first time, he emphasized on human resource management during this period. Human resource management, you can call it as a period of late 18th century and early 19th century. And he also emphasized on concern for workers. Concern for workers, particularly proletariat class. Okay, people overworking on wage rate basis in the industry. So daily wages, you can say. Then next is Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage. Now this Charles Babbage, so his period was 1792 to 1871. So he emphasized on the formal education of management. So he was basically an inventor and management scientist. So he emphasized on uh, no, sorry, Charles Babbage. Charles Babbage emphasized. No, Charles Babbage did not emphasize on management education. Rather, Charles Babbage emphasized on mental work. Mental work. Charles Babbage is the person who basically built the practical mechanical calculator, and this is considered to be the basis of the modern computer. So he emphasized on mental work. That management is related with the mental work, means thought process. And he also emphasized on profit sharing. Profit sharing. That whatever the companies or the businessmen they earn profits, they should share these profits with the workers also, because it is only because of the hard work put in by the workers, so due to which they earn profits. So that was the thinking. Then we have Andrew Urey, Uari, and Charles Duplin. Charles Duplin. So their period was of 1778 to 1857. So they emphasized on management education. Andrew Urey and Charles Duplin. So they emphasized on formal management education, and they also emphasized upon the professionalism of management. Okay, we have already studied the different parameters of profession. So they emphasized on formal management education. So we have also studied that in any profession there should be a body of knowledge which is formally acquired. So Andrew Urey and Charles Duplin from 1778 to 1857. So they emphasized on management education and professionalism. And you can also name one more theorist in the pre-classical era. So he is Towne, Henry Robinson Towne, Towne, from 1844 to 1924. That was his lifespan. And he emphasized on specialized skills. That management involves some specialized skills. Okay, just what we discussed, whether management is an art or science or both. So there we have also listed down some of the points that manifest management is an art also. So art involves skills. So that's why he emphasized on certain specialized skills that are peculiar to the area of management. So this was the you can say, classical era. And now we will start with these three approaches. Classical approach. So first we will take up classical approach. Now in this classical approach, it is the traditional approach where there was increasing emphasis on efficiency. Efficiency. That means more output by using minimum possible inputs. So this was the, you can say, prime focus. Prime focus was on efficiency, and also the functional relationships. So there was also emphasis on the understanding of functional relationships, how marketing is related to production, how production is related to material purchase, okay, how finance is related to all these fields. So just we discussed in the examples of aerial, okay, in the examples of, you can say, Maggie noodles, that how the different functions, they were synchronized with each other to to make the strategy successful, overall strategy successful. If one of the function fails, other functions are not able to perform with efficacy. So this was the understanding. Okay. Then now, for example, let's say nowadays, let's say there is a market which is picking up. Let's say for woolen garments. Okay, particularly in this northern part. So now there is a winter season. Now, point here is that in view of these seasonal demands, the firms, they gear up in the month of May, June, or July. For example, in the month of May and June, they have to procure the yarn, the materials. Then they have to put it into the processing. For example, let's say weaving, okay, dyeing, cutting, folding, etc. So they have to keep it ready by the month of August. Then they have to send it to the distributors, let's say in the month of September. Then from distributors, this would reach to the retailers, let's say in the month of October. So just at the onset of the winter, so their material should be available. Only then they would be able to capture this sales. Otherwise, if the firm starts thinking, okay, just at the time when the winter has already started, so they would be making their materials ready by the end of the period when the season will be over. So there is a lack of synchronization between the market demand and the production. So that's why, so if strategy has to be successful, so all functions should function in an organized and in an integrated manner. Only then the strategy will be successful. So he emphasized here also on functional relationships. Sorry, in the classical approach, these authors. Then they also emphasized upon experience. Okay, because they emphasized upon the training, and one of the important aspect of the training is on the job training. Okay, so people get training while performing jobs. So naturally, experienced people will fetch greater efficiency as compared to the inexperienced people. So there was a bureaucratic structure, command and control, and reward systems. As far as the, yes, they also emphasized upon the reinforcements, that people who give positive results, they should be adequately rewarded, and people who do not give positive results, so they also emphasized penalties on them. So there was the reward punishment nexus, you can say, reward punishment nexus. So these are the important features, you can say, of a classical approach. Now, as far as the prominent thinkers are concerned in the classical approach, so prominent thinkers are, first is F.W. Taylor. F.W. Taylor. F.W. Taylor is known as father of scientific management. So lifespan was from 1856 to 1915. So he basically, his contribution is development of thought of scientific management. Then second is uh, so his companions, you can say, one was the Frank and Lillian Gilbreth. So their period was 1868 to 1972. So their contribution is related to time and motion studies. Time and motion studies. This is also the part of scientific management, time and motion studies. So, so they are the contributors to the scientific management. F.W. Taylor, Frank, and Lillian Gilbreth. Then the second theory, so this is the first theory of scientific management that comes under classical approach. Then we have the second theory. Second theory is called as administrative theory. Administrative theory. Now, this has been given by Henry Fayol. So he has given the general theory of management, general theory of management. So his lifespan was from 1841 to 1925. So he has given general theory of general theory of management, in which he has given 14 principles of management. Then third is Max Weber. So he has given this approach, you call it bureaucratic approach. Now, some consider bureaucratic approach as a part of administrative theory. Okay, some consider it separately, but most of the thinkers, the modern management thinkers, they consider bureaucratic approach as a part of administrative theory. So this was given by Max Weber. So Max Weber, 1864 to 1920. So he has given the general rules of management. So his contribution is in terms of general rules of management. So you can say that there are three sub approaches in the classical approach. One is scientific management. So given by its scholars are F.W. Taylor, Frank and Lillian Gilbreth. Then you have the administrative theory. So Henry Fayol, who has given the general theory of management, in which he has given 14 principles of management. Then third is bureaucratic approach, and so its thinker is Max Weber. Okay, so he has contributed to the schools of management by providing rules of management. Then we will see neoclassical approach. Now, what happened in the neoclassical approach? So, how neoclassical approach is different from classical approach? In the classical approach, worker has been totally ignored. Okay. Basically, they emphasized upon the productivity, and they have tried to manage the worker in the same way in which they used to manage the other assets like machines. Okay, they did not care about that human beings are fragile in nature. They have emotions also. They are required to be motivated. On one particular day, a person is highly motivated, his performance will be different. On another particular day, the same person can be depressed, his performance can be different. Okay, so they did not pay any attention to the concerns of humans. So this was missing in the classical approach. So then in the neoclassical approach, so importance to the person was given in the neoclassical approach. So it was given to the individual, and as well as the importance was given to the group relationships. Okay, for example, individual working alone may have a different mindset, but an individual working as a part of the group, as a part of the team, now his or her performance may be different, altogether different. So group relationships, okay, individuality of the person, so these things were given importance in the neoclassical approach. So its main thinkers are Alton Mayo. We will discuss about his contributions, particularly with respect to Hawthorne experiments 1933. Then it was further extended to the behavioral sciences. So behavioral scientists, so who basically emphasized upon the human behavior at work. So for example, theories of motivation, etc. So they contributed in these terms. So prominents are Abraham Maslow. Then Abraham Maslow's theories of 68, 1968, 1971. Then Chris Argyris. (1957). Then Douglas McGregor. Douglas McGregor. So he gave theories X and Y. We will discuss these theories. 1960. So these are the prominent contributors to the neoclassical approach. Human concern, humans' tendencies to work as an individual and in a group, then the human behavior at work, what motivates them and what does not motivate them. So these things were discussed here in the neoclassical approach. In the neoclassical approach, they also, in the neoclassical approach, again, quantitative approach to management. It also emerged during this period, particularly during World War II, where economic efficiency was emphasized upon. So there are mathematical, quantitative, economic tools, the importance of which was realized, how to bring about efficiency by using the scarce resources. Then there was another contribution in terms of contingency approach. Contingency approach. So basically, now when you see the contribution of Henry Fayol. So Henry Fayol has emphasized upon the universality of management by offering those 14 principles, that these are universally applicable. Now, this thing was discarded in the contingency approach, particularly in this neoclassical approach. Now, this was emphasized that management is situational in nature. Okay, you can have the one set of principles that hold true in one type of settings, but these may not hold true in a different context. Okay, one strategy works in one context, in one organization at one point of time. The same strategy may not work even in the same organization in a different context at a different point of time. So they emphasize that management is situational in nature. Okay. Then we have the modern management approaches. So in the modern management approaches, it is basically it combines the concepts of classical approach, plus social concerns, plus natural sciences, like mathematics, for example, mathematical modeling. And in the modern approach, there is again emphasis upon objectives of the organization. So there is one famous approach, MBO, management by objectives, that we will discuss while discussing planning. Management by objectives. So there are some new approaches like management by exception, management by objectives, and one of the most prominent thinker of the modern approach is Peter Drucker. So we will discuss the contribution of Peter Drucker. So this is how. So basically, they have emphasized upon systems approach. Systems approach. That management works like a system in which there are subsystems, and these subsystems are integrated with one another. So these are the three different types of approaches to the management school. संदीप, आपका माइक ऑन है बेटे. Yes.
संदीप बुदानिया भाई माइक बंद कर ले.
Yes. So now we will start today. We will discuss the contribution of F.W. Taylor. That what is this scientific management all about? Scientific management. Contribution of F.W. Taylor. F.W. Taylor was basically a mechanical engineer. So he was working at Midwell Steel Company. So he noticed few things, and on the basis of which he developed his approach. So what he found, that employees were working at their own wills and wishes. So he found that there is enough potential in the workers or employees which is not properly channelized. So he emphasized upon the employees' capabilities. Then he also tried to investigate that why employees do not work to their full potential. So he found three major reasons that why employees do not work to the full potential. One was the fear of losing jobs. Means if they will finish their work quickly, so they will be relieved of the job at the earliest. So that's why they kept on delaying the work so that they should remain engaged on work. Then second thing was faulty wage systems. Faulty wage systems means there were no differentials, there were no discriminations in the performance of different people. If someone is performing with the highest efficiency, so he used to be paid the same amount what the other person. Yes, Ashutosh, please put off your mic. So there was no discrimination. Means anyone who was doing the job with greatest efficiency and anyone who was giving the decimal performance, both were being equally paid. So there was the faulty wage system. Then third important thing was there were outdated methods of working. So he found these are the three main reasons due to which people were not performing to their full potential. Then what he advocated. So he advocated that there needs to be the organized knowledge, means to perform each and every job. There is a knowledge, and people should have the organized knowledge to do the job. So he emphasized upon the organized knowledge instead of rule of thumb. So that's why he also emphasized upon the training of people, training and development of employees. So first people should be trained. They should have the requisite knowledge, only then they should be put on to the job. Then third important thing which he emphasized, that things are interrelated with each other. The performance of one individual depends upon the performance of the other. So people are supposed to work in a group, and there needs to be the harmony in the group. So he emphasized group harmony. So there has to be the harmony between the members. So how there can be harmony? If there is a cooperation. Now there is a difference between coordination and cooperation. Normally we use these terms interchangeably. Now coordination is something which is formal in nature. People are formally associated. Okay. For example, one person is facilitating the other person because it is a part of job. As far as the cooperation is concerned, it is voluntary in nature. It is informal in nature. Okay, for example, let's say I am sitting idle because the person who is supposed to give me the materials is unable to perform his task. So he has been stuck somewhere. So that's why his job is still unfinished, and that's why I am sitting idle. So if I look forward for the coordination, I'm not supposed to help him because it is his job. So he has to deal with it. But otherwise, if voluntarily I understand that I can assist that fellow, okay, instead of sitting idle, I go to that fellow and try to resolve his problem. Okay, so this is a cooperation. Means I am doing something on voluntary basis for something which I am not supposed to do as a part of my job, but still I help or assist my colleagues. Now this is a cooperation, and this cooperation requires the mentor revolution. Okay, so that's why he also emphasized upon the mentor revolution. What is mentor revolution? When people think that I am going to survive because this organization will survive, my interests are strongly associated with the survival of this organization. So sometimes you see that many government departments, they, or you can say the other units, they are not working in profits, they are losing. Now basically because of that rampant corruption which was widespread during all those years, okay, I would more like to blame the people of the previous generations. I think the people of the modern generation, they are very much sincere, they understand the importance of the survival of the organization. But those who were engaged in the corrupt practices, okay, for example, let's say somebody who was in a state transport department, so used to sell the diesel or the fuel somewhere else, okay, so there was a widespread corruption due to which those units became sick. So what was the point here? The point is that they did not care about the survival of the organizations. Even though they were filling their own pockets, but they did not bother about the survival of the organizations. And what is happening later on? Those organizations became sick. And now their own children are suffering because they are not finding jobs in those organizations. So this is the important point, that this organization, we have to keep it alive, running, progressing. Only then we will progress. This is the mentor revolution. So he emphasized on this aspect. So, so work for maximum output, not restricted output. One approach is called optimizing. Another approach is satisfying. So for example, I have been given a target of producing 70 units, and I have produced 70 units. Now I am relaxing because what was the job was given to me, I have performed. That is satisfying. But what is optimizing? If I understand, yes, I can produce 80 units with these inputs. So I should strive hard for producing 80, not to satisfy at 70. There is a difference between doing things and delivering things. There is a difference between doing and deliver. So when I just do the job, what I have been told to do, I am just doing the job. But when I see that I can perform better, even what they have given to me, than that, so it means my tendency is to deliver. That is a mentor revolution. Okay. So, so basically he advocated these points. So organized knowledge. He said that there is a scientific way of doing things. Okay, for example, if it is an electrician's job, there is a scientific way of doing that particular thing. If it is a plumber's job, there is a scientific way of doing that particular job. So, organized knowledge, there is scientific way of doing things for which people should be trained and developed. They are working in a group. That's why there needs to be a group harmony. They should cooperate with each other with mental evolution, and due to which they would be working for the maximum output, not for the restricted output. Then his companions Frank and Lillian Gilbert, so they carried out time and motion study. So what is this time and motion study? Time and motion study is also the part of scientific management. So basically, they emphasized, or in the scientific management, the most important aspect is standardization. Means to produce one unit, there should be a standard that how much materials would be used. There should be a standard that how many people should be put on to that job. There is a standard that how much time will be devoted to it. In how much time, how many number of units to be produced. So there has to be the standardization. This standardization is the basis for scientific management. So in the time and motion study, so basically they carried out some research on the motions. So for example, hand movements, they studied about hand movements. So that what should be the movement of the hand due to which there should be the less fatigue in the worker. And when there will be a less fatigue in the worker, they would be able to produce more. So one such exercise was carried out for modifying the brick laying approach, and in which they increased the output from 120 bricks to 350. So basically, they try to explore the ways in which, so in the motion study, they try to explore the ways in which maximum output can be obtained in the stipulated period by reducing the motions or by modifying the motions which are causing more fatigue and wastage of time. So time and motion study was also the part of this scientific management. Now, as far as this approach is concerned, there are limitations also. This approach is not free of limitation. Now, the basic principles of this scientific management, these revolve around the operational problems. And there is no focus, or very little focus has been given on the managerial issues. So the major managerial issues have been skipped. And there was increasing emphasis on the operational problems, you can say. And that is why some people call that it is more of engineering focused than management focused. Second important aspect here is that this theory is considered to be the harsh theory. Okay, because the human elements have been completely ignored. Human behavior at work has been completely ignored. So, human desire for job satisfaction, that has been completely ignored in this approach. So, one more thing you have to add here in the points that we have listed in the contribution to the scientific management. Taylor introduced piece-based system. Piece-based system. Earlier, there was the time-based system. For example, in many places, you see here that there is a time-based system that people are paid according to the number of days they have worked, the number of hours they have worked, okay? But he emphasized upon the piece-based system, that the remuneration of the worker will depend upon the output. So it was considered very harsh, because on a particular day, if someone is sick, is unable to produce, so it means he will be getting no remuneration for that. So in such cases, the survival of the people will be at stake. So these are the limitations of the theory of scientific management put forward by F.W. Taylor. So tomorrow we will discuss the theories of Henry Fayol and Max Weber.
Thank you, sir.